Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams. He discovered he'd been transformed in his bed into a giant, verminous bug. He lay on his armor-hard back and lifted his head a little to discover that his brown abdomen had been divided into rigid bow-like sections. And his numerous limbs, which were pitifully thin compared to the rest of his circumference, twitched helplessly before his eyes. Gregor lay his head back into his earlier position and thought to himself, this whole getting up early makes a man really stupid. Why don't I just forget that any of this has ever happened and go back to sleep? From his first publication in 1915, Franz Kafka has been one of the most misunderstood writers of all time. Many other people have interpreted their own meanings behind Kafka's writings, because Kafka himself has never revealed the meaning behind them. But one theme which is constant in almost every analysis is betrayal of loved ones, leading many people to speculate that perhaps Kafka was referencing the story of Jesus Christ. As the old adage states, we fear what we do not understand. And like the Christ figure, Kafka's writings argue against the dangers of perfidy to the entertainment of the absurdity of life. Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. As Gregor was thinking all of this over in the greatest of haste, there was a gentle knock at his door.
Gregor,
It was his mother.
it's 7:15. Hadn't you better be going now?
Gregor was startled when he heard his own voice responding.
Yes, Mother! I'm coming!
It was clearly his earlier voice, but it was intermingled as if from below with an irrepressibly painful sound that left the words distinct in the first moment and then distorted in the reverberation so that one did not know if one had heard it correctly. Because of this short conversation with his mother, Gregor's father now became aware that Gregor was still inexplicably at home. And so now he knocked, lightly, but with a fist. Gregor, what's going on in there?
I'm coming!
Gregor had no intention of actually opening the door, but he congratulated himself on his practice of always locking the bedroom door, even when at home. Now, if Gregor was going to get himself out of bed, he was going to need the use of hands and arms, but instead of these, all he had were pitifully thin little limbs. So, Gregor pushed himself to the edge of the bed and fell to the ground with a loud thud, but not a real crash. His back was more elastic than he had originally thought, and the carpet had softened his blow. But Gregor had hit his head during the fall, and he turned it now, irritated and in pain, and rubbed it into the carpet. Gregor, open this door right now.
No!
Deathly stillness fell upon the house. Gregor, what's going on? You're barricading yourself in your room. You're answering only with a no. Anna, go call a locksmith. Upon hearing this, Gregor pushed himself over to the edge of the door, and with the help of the easy chair, he flung himself against it and remained upright. The balls of his limbs had sticky stuff on them. And so now, using his mouth, he set out to turn the key in the lock.
But he soon discovered that he didn't have any real teeth to speak of. However, as if to make up for this, he did discover that his jaw was naturally very strong. But he did not seem to notice that obviously he was inflicting some sort of damage to his mouth,
because a brown fluid came out. Flowed all over the key and dripped onto the floor.
Listen for a moment. He's turning the key.
To Gregor, this was great encouragement. So he bit down as hard as he could on the key and twisted it until he could hear the distinctive click of the lock. And then breathlessly, he rested his head against the door handle, pushed down, nudged open the door, and made his way through the narrow opening. For the first time, he had firm floor beneath him. His limbs obeyed his every move. Gregor's mother. She moved backwards with a hand over her open mouth, as if an invisible force was constantly pushing her away. Forgetting that behind her was a table with all of the dishes on it, when she reached the table, she sat down on it, as if absent-mindedly, and did not seem to notice that coffee poured in a large stream from an overturned container. When Gregor saw this coffee, he couldn't help from snapping his jaws in the air a few times.
No! No! No!
Gregor's mother collapsed into the arms of Gregor's father, who now began to stomp his feet in order to drive Gregor back into the room from which he came. He held his cane high above his head. Now, Gregor had no real practice in moving backwards, and so it was very slow going. And at any moment, he faced the threat of a mortal blow to the back or to the head from the cane in his father's hand. If only his father had not hissed so unbearably. Because of that, Gregor totally lost his mind. He was almost completely turned around when, always with this hissing in his ear, he made a mistake and turned back a little. And it soon became apparent that Gregor could not fit back in the doorway from which he came, and his father would never allow him the elaborate preparations he needed to orient himself and thus possibly make it through. So Gregor thrust himself, come what might, into the door jamb. One side went up and the other went down, and soon his side was sore with scraping, and he was leaving little blotches all over the white door. Soon he was stuck fast and could no longer move on his own. On one side, his legs twitched helplessly above him, and on the other side, his legs were pressed painfully into the door jamb. Just then, something thrown really hard flew past Gregor's head and rolled in front of him. It was an apple. Another one thrown almost immediately after it just barely missed Gregor. His father had decided to bombard him. From the fruit bowl at the sideboard, his father threw apple after apple after apple at Gregor. These apples rolled around on the floor as if electrified and collided into one another. A weakly thrown apple grazed up Gregor's back harmlessly, but another one thrown almost immediately after it dove into Gregor's back really hard. Gregor wanted to pull himself away, as if somehow changing position he could stop this incredible pain. But he felt like he was nailed into place. Then, suddenly, one strong, liberating push, his father shoved him into his room. Gregor scurried off deep into the interior, bleeding profusely. The door was slammed shut by the cane, and suddenly it was quiet. What now? Gregor asked himself. Gregor soon discovered that he could no longer move on his own. This did not surprise Gregor. It seemed incredible that he'd been able to move as much as he had with these pitiful little legs. True, he had pain throughout his entire body. The rotting apple still lodged in his back. The inflamed surrounding area, he hardly seemed to notice anymore, because his pain seemed to be getting weaker and weaker, as if they would disappear completely. Gregor began to think of his family with deep fondness and loving. And he remained in this state of infinite, peaceful reflection until the general dawning the next morning. The clock tower struck 3 a.m. Then, without willing it, Gregor sank his head down, and through his nostrils, his last breath flowed weakly out.